Good evening, guys and gals out there listening to We Are Paradox Media. Welcome to Late Night in the Rockies. I am your host, TessaTNT, and I am live tonight broadcasting from beautiful Bayfield, Colorado. So, unfortunately, our guest tonight could not make it due to family issues, and as everyone knows, family comes first. So, hopefully things go well for Mr. Chris Chappelle, and we'll have him back on for the 28th. Hoping things work out for him. So tonight, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants. So I'm going to be telling you guys stories about Friday the 13th, Skinwalkers, aliens, UFOs, so on and so forth. And if you have a story that you'd like to share on air with us, be sure to call in at 970-335-9596. That's 970-335-9596, and we'd love to hear your stories. So our chat room that we mainly hang out in is on Spreaker.com, and you can find us under We Are Paradox Media. If you have a question or story you want to share on there because you're afraid to call in, just put it in bold and uppercase letters, all caps, so I could see who has a story or who has a question. You can also find us on Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Tumblr, YouTube, SoundCloud, as well as TuneIn Radio. So those are some places you can find us. So last night was Friday the 13th, and it was pretty interesting. Someone in Spreaker, you had said, Saw or Hostel, which would you rather be stuck in? Oh, snap. I'm thinking Hostel, because, I don't know, the little guy from Saw really freaks me out. And you guys in the chat room, make sure that you put your answers in there as well. Saw or Hostel, which would you rather be stuck in? Oh my goodness, that's such a hard question. But yeah, Friday the 13th, I got to call in and hang out with Sleepy Dave Davenport, who was our Monday and Friday host, and got to share some stories on there, some different experiences that I've had in my life, and Sleepy does such a good job, and he's so laid back. He also says, it's 8297. Do you know where the true Friday the 13th came from? Well, from what I understand, oh my goodness, I'm trying to remember. Well, if you can tell us, that'd be awesome. And anyone in the chat room. Hey, Ad Gnome, Drew Gnome Drew, Mooney, Oscar. What's up, Oscar? Good to see you. Okay, so the question was the true meaning of Friday the 13th. Bowie is in space. I bet David Bowie is having a really awesome astral hop out there. So you had said on Spreaker, which that's another place you can find me and watch me as I'm dealing with my shenanigans. But he said it's where the Knights Crusaders were convicted of being heretics by the Pope of France and were burned at the stake alive. And actually the Pope was just really pissed off because they wouldn't give him any more loans. Like, they had loaned him money in the past, and then they cut him off, and as soon as they did that, then he started basically crucifying and sacrificing them. But yeah, here it says it may have begun in the Middle Ages, where some Christian traditions believed that Jesus' Last Supper, the 13th guest, was the traitor Judas. The next day, Friday, was the day of crucifixion. In some sources of a particular Norse myth, 12 gods had a dinner party at Valhalla, and an uninvited 13 guests walked in and killed the god of joy and gladness. Well, that's not cool. In other cultures, other days may be considered bad luck. as far as Friday the 17th in Italy and Tuesday the 13th in Spanish-speaking countries. All right, so Friday the 13th, and we talked about a few stories on the air last night, and I didn't even share my personal Friday the 13th story that I had experienced as a kid. I was 6, maybe 7 years old, and it was after my mom had passed. She was killed by a drunk driver, so we were living with our dad. Well, when she passed away, my 3 older siblings went with their parents, and me and my little brother went with our dad. Kathy and Greg would come and visit occasionally, and I experienced a lot of crazy stuff with them. I don't know if you guys have ever played Bloody Mary. We did that, and we actually saw her in the background, and there was like a bloody claw hanging down where the plant used to be, and all kinds of freaky stuff. But the one that I remember the most is we were sitting out on the front porch, and my sister had a friend over, and he broke out a tape player, and on the tape player he was playing this music, and I don't even remember what it was, but it was pretty creepy. And he's like, just look around in the trees. In the trees is where they're going to show up, and we're thinking, there, who's they? And all of a sudden you'd see these different like shadow figures in the different trees, and it was really creepy. Like, I just wanted to run inside, but there's nobody else inside, so I just kind of clung to my sister's leg. But yeah, that was pretty interesting. Generally, Friday the 13th, I haven't had a lot going on, but I can imagine that for the police force and the hospitals and such, being that Friday the 13th landed on a full moon this year, that it might have been extra crazy, because a lot of things happen on the full moon. A lot of things happen on Friday the 13th, and with those being combined, could be pretty epic at the hospitals and such. So, Friday the 13th. And this is a story that I told last night, but it's about a 13-year-old boy who was struck by lightning. And it was back in 2010, and the Mirror reported that a boy who also happened to be 13 years old was lucky to suffer only minor burns when struck by lightning while enjoying an afternoon air show in England. Even freakier, the lightning reportedly struck at exactly 1:13 p.m., or 13:13 in military time. It was on Friday the 13th, and he was 13, so there's a lot of 13s adding up there. And that reminded me of the whole acquired savant syndrome, when people are, hi Sharon, Sister Sharon's in the chat room. Freaking gnomes. But this lady had been struck by lightning not once, but several different times. And after that, she could feel when the energy was coming into the area, and when to and when not to go outside. I gotta say hi in the chat room to Sharon really quick. I love you, sister. Okay, so the next Friday the 13th story I have is about a rugby team, and it desperately tried to survive a plane crash. So on October 13th, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 crashed into the snowy Andes while on its way to Chile. The flight contained 45 passengers, including members of the Old Christians rugby team. Only 16 passengers survived. 9 died in the crash. Several others were suffering from injuries and extreme conditions the days following, and an avalanche took 8 more. The rest infamously resorted to consuming the frozen bodies of those who perished in order to stay alive for the more than 2 months it took for help to reach them. After realizing that search parties had ceased looking for them, 2 of the rugby players made a 10-day journey and finally returned with assistance 72 days after the crash. I remember that story. They actually made a movie out of that, right? And everybody was feeling guilty that they had to eat their teammates, but they didn't know what else they were going to do. It's kind of dire straits. At least they weren't killing each other in order to eat, but yeah. Could you imagine being stuck in that situation? No bueno. It's not cool. So this one is about 38 witnesses to murder that said nothing. Hey, Green Bay Packer 80. Excuse me. So nearly 40 residents at an apartment complex in Brooklyn admitted to overhearing the attack and murder of Susan Kitty Genovese on March 13th, 1964. The only problem, none of them reported it to the police while it was happening. Kitty ultimately died of stab wounds that authorities later reported she likely could have survived if someone had called them. Psychologists now refer to this as the bystander effect. And I know when I took street law, they were saying you could witness a crime or a murder or whatnot where, or even a rape. Like when something's happening, you could be watching, and as long as you don't say anything, you're not a guilty party whatsoever. So that's where people these days are afraid of calling, trying to help somebody. Also doing CPR. A lot of people have survived CPR and then sue the person that saved their lives because they received a broken sternum and then some broken ribs and stuff like that. And so it's hard to know what to do for some people, but for me, I'm just there to help. So I don't care. You can try to sue me. Let's take it in front of a jury. Let's see what happens. I saved your life. You should be grateful. So this one, a bus conductor had a streak of repeated bad luck. Former North Wales bus conductor Bob Renfrey claimed multiple issues happening on Friday the 13th over the years, including 4 car crashes, losing his job, falling into a river, and crashing his motorcycle. His wife even tried to schedule his funeral for a Friday the 13th, but all of the local undertakers were too busy that day. She believes he would have found the humor in it. That does make sense. I don't know if I'd want to be buried on Friday the 13th. And my son was supposed to be induced on Friday the 13th, and I was like, forget that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Okay, so this one. The Yankee Leaper made his last jump. Oh, wow. There's a really cool old flyer on this one. When Daredevil Sam Patch made his attempt at leaping over the Genesee River Falls on November 13th, 1829, it was sadly also his last stunt. Sam had previously had success about a month before at Niagara Falls, but reports from his final leap claimed he appeared out of sorts, possibly inebriated, when he jumped. Perhaps he was looking at a bit of liquid courage? Yeah. I'm not brave enough for that stuff. Like, when I was younger, I would have totally gone for it, but the older I get, the more chicken I become. October blizzards buried upstate New York. In 2006, residents of Buffalo, New York, woke up to find their town blanketed by Lake Storm Aphid, covering them in over 20 inches of snow. As the storm continued, up to 3.5 feet of snow piled in parts of the city. The initial storm cost 3 people their lives, 2 from automobile accidents and 1 from falling tree branches, while 400,000 homes went without electricity. Nearby Toronto remained completely unaffected by the weather. Yeah. That one's aight. Well, one man had his worst fear come true. New York resident Daz Baxter was so afraid of bad luck following him around on Friday the 13th in August 1976 that he opted to stay at home. Unfortunately, his plan tragically backfired when the floor beneath his bed caved in and he plummeted down 6 floors to his death. Could you imagine? I know. I hate dreams where I'm falling. I used to have a repeated dream when I was younger, and it always started out, I'm on this big red iron beam. And I'm like, cool, I love running along boards and trim and different things, balancing and seeing how fast I could run as a kid. Well, I go to stand up on this beam and I see that there's clouds beneath me. And I'm like, wow, this is weird. And then all of a sudden they part and you see these tops of skyscrapers and then little tiny cars and even tinier people walking around. And all of a sudden the wind would blow and the iron beam would swing back and forth rapidly. And I tried to catch myself, but I ended up plummeting to my death every time. I'd wake up right before I hit the crack of the sidewalk. Gnome Drew said, Friday the 13th was interesting to me. Gnome, you should call in and tell us what happened. I haven't had a Friday the 13th experience for quite some time, but call in Gnome Drew. 1-970-335-9596. So this one says, a British couple had a woeful wedding. In August 2003, Michelle and Gary Docherty's nuptials were plagued by a swarm of wasps that relentlessly attacked their guests. One even flew right up Michelle's wedding gown when she arrived to walk down the aisle. We've had wasps really bad this year. I think the babies have hatched and they're kind of unschooled. So when you're having a picnic, they just fly up there and try to eat your chicken and aren't trying to sting you or defend themselves. But yeah, my dog, she was chained up on a cable yesterday, and I went out to feed and water her, and she was wrapped around the barbecue grill, which I hadn't used in over a year because it died on me. But she was wrapped around that, and I'm trying to unhook her, but the wasps are flying out and stinging her, and I'm afraid I'm going to get stung, and oh, they're so pesky. And I can't believe that they like meat. Like, they eat meat. We had a picnic, and we had chicken out, and they land on the bones with the leftover meat on there. They land on everything, but they would eat the meat so quickly. It was fascinating, and I didn't realize that they ate meat. Makes me think of how they help with different bodies of animals and such in nature being broken down. Really weird. Yeah, I never even knew that. So, Nazis bombed Buckingham Palace. All of London suffered from the bombings in World War II, but King George VI was personally attacked by German troops when he began dropping right onto the palace in September 1940. His daughter, now Queen Elizabeth II, was already safely tucked away at Windsor Castle. And then, this one says a cruise ship crashed off the coast. In January 2012, the Costa Concordia cruise ship collided with a submerged rock that caused it to partially sink before capsizing just hours later. Over 30 passengers and members of the crew died on board. I think I saw that one on the news. Man, it was in 2012. It didn't seem that long ago. So millions of dollars are lost every year, and reports from the CNBC claim that at least $700 million are lost by businesses when a Friday the 13th rolls around due to folks letting their superstitious side sway them from travel and major purchases. And this one is saying that we might have a close encounter with an asteroid. Scientists have had their eye on the Apophis asteroid for years, with concern that it might actually collide with Earth on April 13th, 2029, which will also happen to be a Friday. Luckily, NASA has come to the conclusion that it's more than likely to just get very close to us before looping back around our orbit. So are you guys shocked by any of these stories? I don't know. I wasn't very impressed. I mean, strange things do happen, but I'm looking for some really Freaky Friday stuff going on here. Which brings me to the death premonition. So a few years ago, this person woke up to 2 text messages from his girlfriend and a friend of his. Both asked if he was alright. Apparently they both had a dream that I had been struck by a red truck at an intersection I routinely took. The 2 of them weren't close, and I had no reason to suspect that they were playing a prank. It was just really spooky, and they both had the same dream, the same night, with the same details. I wonder if that person took a different route. Hey, champ. How's it going? Good to see you. How you doing? So this one's called The Facebook Stalker. And it says, I went to a bar about 20 minutes from my apartment in Brooklyn, New York, because of construction and because I didn't know the way home. I lived there for about a month, and it took me some time to get home. When I got there, I noticed I had a Facebook message from someone I didn't know saying, nice apartment, can I come in? I looked outside, and there was a guy who had followed me home. I have no idea how he got my Facebook details. I bolted the door and blocked him. That's pretty creepy. Like, who the hell is this guy? And right, how did he know her Facebook information? Weird. This one's called The Little Ghost Girl. I was catching the last train back from London and had about an hour to kill at a station. It was late, and there were just 2 of us on the platform, me and a little girl. It's unusual to see a little girl on her own in the dead of night, so I parked myself on a bench about 20 meters away and decided to subtly keep an eye on her to make sure she was okay. This girl appeared to be about 10 years old or so, in her school uniform, very, very still. After 5 minutes passed, this little girl was still standing in exactly the same position that she was before, staring directly at me. 10 minutes passed. 15. I could feel her eyes burning into my soul. I considered going to find help, but then a cleaner walked past her. He didn't even look at her. He just swept past. 20 minutes. It was getting ridiculous. This poor little girl had been abandoned or something. I decided that when 25 minutes passed, I'd hop up and go ask her if she was okay. I took a picture to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I stood up and tentatively walked towards her. I got a bit closer. I saw her face, the shadows hitting it under the dim station lights. It looked half melted, like she had no real eyes. My heart was pumping faster and faster. I was scared, I admit, but I knew this girl needed someone's help. I needed to ask her if she was okay. Besides, what kind of person would I be if I just left her there? I walked up closer to her, opened my mouth to ask her something, trembling. And I couldn't believe what I saw. She was made of Lego. She was a goddamn art installation made of Lego. Just standing there, being creepy, staring at people and being made of Lego. That is so funny. I wonder who did that. And the first picture he took, it looks like a ghost or something. And then you get the closer picture, and she's got square edges and such. That's pretty funny. The creepy caller. I was alone in the house. An unknown number called me, and I could hear the same TV show I was watching in the background. I kept saying hello, and my voice would echo back. I thought it was just one of those broken calls where you hear your mic feedback, but what happened next creeped me out. Right before I got down the call, I heard a voice whispering, "Goodbye, good night." And I stared at the phone confused as to what had happened. Then I said hello again. The static and the echo disappeared. It was all quiet, and then suddenly, hi. I put down the phone, turned off the TV, then ran to bed. If it's in the house or right next to you, that's when you get the echo and the background sound. That's pretty creepy. Wow. The Vampire College. My first college roommate was kicked out because cocaine. They sent another kid to room with me that semester who was beyond weird. He never even set up his bed. He would just, at night, put this cape on, I shit you not, and go out all night long, coming home right before class in the morning. In the morning, he would take his cape off, stand in front of the mirror, and slap his face a few times, then go to class. That's so weird. Man, sometimes I excuse me, sometimes I'm glad I didn't go to college. Oh. Wow. He must have been a pretty bad superhero. All right. This one's called The Reincarnated Sister. My daughter was 4. We just had the G-rated "where babies come from" talk. She said, "Oh, I remember that from when I was in Grandma's tummy." I said, "No, honey, you were in my tummy, not Grandma's." And she shook her head and smiled at me as if I was completely dense. "No, Mommy, I was in Grandma's tummy first, but I choked and died, and Grandma almost died too, so I had to wait to come back in yours." 15 years ago, my mother almost died giving birth to a stillborn daughter. The baby had strangled in the cord and when she dropped into birth position. No one in my family has ever spoken of it since. My daughter's birth date is only 3 days different from my dead sister's. That's pretty interesting. The Haunted Discman. I was at a friend's house a few years ago, helping her clean and organize her room. We were alone in the house with the radio playing quietly. I get to the bottom drawer of her dresser. It's filled with random stuff she didn't know what else to do with. I reach the very bottom of the drawer and find this old Discman. A few minutes later, I notice music playing other than the radio, so she turns it off to figure out where it's coming from. I can hear something playing out of the headphone jack of the CD player, so we plugged in some headphones and took a listen. A woman was singing. She had a pleasant voice, but it was no language I could recognize. The instruments felt unfamiliar too, not like normal guitar and percussion, but a strange combination of electronic-like sounds. We unplugged the headphones and opened the player. No CD was inside, no batteries either. I have yet to come up with an explanation. This one's called I don't even know how to describe this one. When I was 16, I would jump on the trampoline out back for hours. One night, when I was jumping, a kid ran past our fence, full speed, carrying a box about the size and shape of a skateboard. He ran to the park behind my house and held it by the edge, then tossed it into the air so that it flipped a few times before landing on the ground. He was just stood over it and staring for a pretty long time, then he just bolts full speed back past our fence like he didn't even notice I was there. The box looked like it was moving. Then something started to rise out of it. I actually stopped jumping and rubbed my eyes and watched as what looked like a full-grown man rose out of the box that was like 2 inches thick. He had an elongated head with no hair. His skin was orange and his eyes were huge and pitch black. He raised one arm up to his side and the box just kind of went into what I can only describe as a trench coat. He walked over to the only pavilion we have at the small park, grabbed the metal beam holding on and up the overhang and started to bang his head hard onto a beam over and over. Then without warning, he just stopped and his head quickly ripped around and stared right at me. It was like he could feel me watching. A giant smile came across his face as those dark eyes just stared at me. He tilted his head back and forth a few times. As I was about to start crying, and I don't know why I wanted to cry, but his face just filled me with terror, he turned around and kind of phased down the road off into the distance, and he was gone. That one's weird. Sounds kind of like some sort of alien or other being. Strange. So January 13th, 1939 was Australia's Black Friday. The summer of 1939 in Australia was one of the hottest they'd seen in a long time. The ground was dry and flowing water was a rare sight to see. The drought was severe enough to have people in and on water watches. Then on Friday, January 13th, several groups of people disregarded Smokey the Bear and left their fires burning. It wasn't one person or even one group of people that were responsible for the following disaster, but the event was certainly initiated by people. From there, the fire spread across the acres and acres of land, destroying over 60 sawmills and killing over 70 people. 1,000 houses were lost, almost 5 million acres of land were torched, and even today, over 70 years later, Australia's land feels the lack of fertilization and moisture that was caused by the wildfire. On October 13th, 2006, New York City's average snowfall is about 2 to 4 feet in a year. Spread out over a few months, that's not a bad rate at all. But one October morning, Buffalo decided to throw a very cold party. During the evening of October 12th, and well into the afternoon, 2 feet of snow buried Buffalo, New York. If you don't think that's a lot of snow, then first off, you haven't lived in a snow state. Secondly, here are some stats to break that down for you. 80 to 90% of the roads in New York were pronounced impassable, and driving ban was issued. 3 people died, 2 in car-related accidents, and 1 being crushed by falling snow. A falling snow log tree. Hundreds of trees snapped. 40,000 people were left without power and were expected to run out of water as pipes going into the city were shut off. August 13th, 1976. Let's see. Hold on, I'm reading. I think I've read this one already. Oh no. Yeah, that was terrible. And I've read this one. So this one is about Skinwalkers, since we don't have anybody calling in. Gnome Drew. Hey Rick, good to see you. Gnome Drew, are you going to call in? You said you had a good Friday the 13th story. Let me put the number back in the chat room and let you guys know if you want to call in, just call 970-335-9596 and share your Friday the 13th stories. So I'm moving on to Skinwalkers, and I've had a couple occasions with them. Once when I lived... Cheers, Rick. Doing good. My guest canceled on me, so I'm boring everyone to death. But the first time I experienced Skinwalkers, which I had heard stories all throughout school from people, especially natives, Navajo, about their Skinwalker stories. My first experience, I believe I was about 22 years old, living at the base of Sleeping Ute Mountain, which is on a Ute reservation, of all things. But I went out to smoke one night on the back porch because I don't smoke in my house, and all of a sudden I see these glowing eyes walking towards me. And then there's more, and then more and more, and more and more and more, to the point where it's totally surrounding the light line around where I'm sitting and smoking. So I went inside, of course, and didn't deal with that any longer. And then a couple years back, I'm heading down to Phoenix, Arizona to see my mom and sister, and we're telling the kids different Skinwalker stories that we had heard throughout our life, and we're having the kids look out on the side of the road, and we're watching and seeing if we see anything. and all of a sudden we see this small red and white, I believe it was a Chevy truck, and both the doors were open, all the interior lights were on, and nobody to be seen anywhere. Well, about 20 yards down the road, there was this woman, and I would say she's about 6 foot tall. She's very pale. She had long blonde hair. She had a shirt on, and from a distance, it looked like she was pregnant. But as you got closer, you could see that her stomach was much bigger than that, and her stomach was protruding from her shirt, and her pants were busted open, and her arms, which was the weirdest thing, her arms length was below her knees. So that was really weird, and she was looking the other way, and we all saw it at the same time. Who ate all the pies? Cedric. I think she did. But yeah, so my husband's like, do you want to turn around? And I'm like, hell no, I don't want to turn around. And he said, well, she looked pregnant. And I'm like, I don't think she was pregnant. I think she ate somebody. I think that was a Skinwalker, and that was between Tuba City and Kayenta, Arizona. Really weird. And I can tell you a few more stories that my friends told me. One in particular that I really remember. A very beautiful Navajo girl that I knew that went to church with me. And we were on a temple trip in Utah. And we're all sitting around one night telling ghost stories and such. And she tells me that she's going to visit family. And she's driving down this dirt road. And it's dark outside. All of a sudden she sees this old Navajo lady wearing like this red Navajo dress with her corals and turquoise and such around her neck and her hair put up. And they keep driving because this is really weird. Like, nobody should be out at this hour. And a few yards down the road, they see her again. And this time she's limping, as if something's wrong with her. The next time they see her, she's dragging her feet and or her foot behind her, basically. And then the very last time, she was right in front of the car. So instead of just driving through her, they turned around and drove the opposite direction and got the heck out of there. And then I was raised, well, from the age of 7 on to about 14, LDS. And we had missionaries over. We'd feed them and stuff. And they came in one night and they were really freaked out. And we're like, hey, what's going on? Well, they had gone up to Sleeping Ute Mountain, which is right outside of Cortez, Colorado. And they took a wrong route and they ended up on the mountain. And they said there were these coyote wolf type creatures. And all of a sudden they start attacking the van they're in and, you know, shaking it back and forth, trying to break into the vehicle. And so they whip around and haul ass off the mountain. Well, they show up at our house and they tell us the story, and we go out and look, and there's actual like dents in the side of the vehicle where they had like been hitting it and trying to get into it. Very odd. But this story is called Maybe Trying to Hit It Wasn't the Best Idea, which it makes you wonder, like, should you hit it? Should you slam on its on your brakes? But this one says, my father owns a small delivery service that operates out of Farmington, New Mexico, and this is about 30 minutes away from us. We mostly deliver small packages out to the middle of nowhere that are too much of a hassle for the larger delivery companies to bother with. My dad is the only employee, and we have a few pickup trucks and a trailer. One day, we get a delivery out of Window Rock, Arizona, on the Navajo Reservation, about 2 hours from Farmington. My dad gets the call for the job while he is chilling with his Navajo friend Travis and his girlfriend. Travis mentions how he's got family in Window Rock that he hasn't seen in ages and suggests they go with him. I was about 6 or 7 at the time, and it was the summertime, so Dad decides we'll go down together. He can do this delivery really quick. Then while Travis sees his family, we can go check out the Window Rock, big rock face with a large hole in it that goes to the other side, and it's pretty cool looking. It's really pretty. It's made out of like sandstone, so it's a reddish, orangish color. We had to convoy in separate trucks since my dad was loaded down with freight. We decided to bring along some walkie-talkies so we could communicate with one another. We spend our time in Window Rock. Everything is generally uneventful, and we start heading home along the old highway with my dad and I in front, and Travis and his girlfriend in their truck behind us. I honestly don't remember most of the Window Rock trip, but this next part I can never forget. We are somewhere on the highway between Window Rock and Gallup, New Mexico. It had just rained earlier in the day, and the road was kind of slick, so we were taking it pretty slow. On the left of the highway, there's nothing but sandstone cliffs, and on the right, there is a huge field separated from the road by a small barbed wire fence. We crest the top of this hill, and down at the bottom of the hill, we see what appears to be a very large dog sitting back on its haunches in the middle of the road, facing cliffs. My dad calls over the radio, "Hey, Trav, do you see that big-ass dog?" Travis starts yelling back over the radio, "That is not a dog. Speed up right now and hit it." He sounds almost hysterical. He just keeps screaming, "Hit it! JJ, you have to hit it. Please, please hit the effing thing right now." So my dad starts to speed up, and as we get closer, I can begin to see it a little more clearly. It's covered in this brown, wiry, matted hair that appears to have dried blood all over it. It's still facing the cliffs, but the moment our headlights hit it, it turns and looks at us, and it has a face. I don't know how else to describe it other than a mix between a bear's and a human's face. It looks twisted and distorted and almost in pain. As we get closer to this thing, we start to realize it's actually freaking huge. Though it's still sitting on its haunches, it is about shoulder height with the hood of the truck. We get literally inches from it when it lets out this scream that sounds like someone screaming as their lungs were filling with water, and it leaps backwards towards the field, landing just on our side of the barbed wire fence. Then with another leap, it's gone from sight. Travis comes over the radio again. "Holy crap, keep driving. We have to get out of here. We have to go faster." He kept repeating that last part. "We have to get out of here and we have to go faster." Pretty soon we are speeding like crazy, and just as we start to come near the outskirts of Gallup, we get pulled over. Travis pulls his truck over with us. Naturally, this makes the cop, a Navajo man himself, very on edge, and he immediately asks why Travis felt the need to pull over as well. Travis says, "We just saw a Skinwalker a few miles back, and it's been following us." The officer immediately turns white, stammers something about a verbal warning, gets in his car, and takes off, and we do the same. We didn't see anything else that night, but when we got home, Travis refused to let us leave without taking some kind of Navajo totem thing that was supposed to keep it away. It's scary. One other issue I had was on the way to Gallup, and I was with my sister Amanda, and we didn't see the Skinwalker. And we're in a 78 Toyota Corolla. We have a little boom box for music, and man, we're playing all kinds of 90s music. And all of a sudden, because we don't have AC, we have the windows cracked. All of a sudden we hear this screaming through the windows, like someone screaming blood-curdling murder. And I'm doing like 75 miles an hour, and this thing is running right along with the vehicle. It was so strange, but we were really freaked out. We turned up the boom box and rolled up the windows and drove as fast as that little car would go. And it was only a 4-speed 78 Toyota Corolla, so we got it up to 110. Pretty good speed for a little rice burner. This one's called "Don't Get Off the Bus." Anybody that has been on the Navajo reservation has either probably heard of some creepy things or have experienced pretty creepy things, namely skinwalkers. I have only seen one, and here's my story. I come from a small town in northern Arizona that's sandwiched between the Peyote Reservation to the north and the U.S.'s largest Navajo reservation to the south. My high school, being so small, A 1A high school that has an average of 80 students enrolled every year always had to travel south about 5 to 10 hours one way to play another high school in any sport. This means that we traveled a lot on the Navajo Res, and we also usually stayed at hotels when we would head out to play and come home in the morning, but this trip was a little bit different. I remember the basketball coach saying that the school didn't have enough money to put up the teams in a hotel that trip, so we were going to be on the road for a total of about 12 hours. I was the only male senior to play basketball that season. We had just got done playing our game and headed home in our bus, Big Blue. We were headed out, and it wasn't long, about 2 hours of driving, before we had entered the res. By this time, everyone was asleep, and it being about 2 in the morning. When we had crossed the res's border, I noticed the bus driver had sped up and was now going about 85 miles per hour. I thought this was a little weird because he never exceeded the speed limit, at least not on my high school career. For some reason, I couldn't fall back to sleep like the rest of the teammates, and I just sat at the back of the bus staring out across the desolate desert landscape that was lit up by the full moon. As I looked out, I could see a figure running towards the bus at an angle of pursuit and keeping up with the bus at 85 miles per hour. As the figure got closer, I saw that it was a humanoid form. As a matter of fact, it looked exactly like a human, only that the face was painted half black and half white with glowing eyes. Glowing eyes like a rabbit's eyes reflecting light from a spotlight. I immediately thought, holy crap, it's a Skinwalker. The Skinwalker ran up to the edge of the bus, or the edge of the road, and just kept up the pace with the bus, hurdling sagebrush and rocks while staring at me. After I made eye contact with the thing, I could not look away. It was as if something was holding my head and my eyes in place. The Skinwalker just smiled at me, this inhumane smile that went ear to ear, showing crooked yellow pointed teeth. I felt like I was going to throw up, and I was panicking through the whole ordeal. The Skinwalker started to crumple down onto all fours, still keeping up with the bus. I could see his bones crack and reform. Hair started appearing all over the Skinwalker's body. In about 3 seconds was now a coyote, and it ran off back into the desert, out of view. As soon as it was gone, I ran to the onboard bathroom and puked a mixture of food and blood. I didn't want to tell anyone for fear they would think I was crazy. I confided in my Navajo friend. She told me that I needed to see the chief, who also happened to be a friend of mine, and get a blessing. I saw him the next school day in the parking lot. He just came up to me and mumbled something in Navajo while waving a feather scepter-like thing, turned around, got in his truck, and drove away. To this day, I haven't seen another Skinwalker. It might be due to the fact that I moved away from the town and res, and if I do have to go south, I go around, way around. There's so many places or ways you can go, but it's still reservation land and out in the desert. Frick says, quick, where's my bus pass? Oh, I had another story that I remembered, but now I forgot. I got distracted. I don't know, Shane. Maybe it's because of the stress. So maybe he had like an ulcer appear due to stress of the situation. And I've heard different people say that that when you make eye contact with a Skinwalker, it can actually take like hold of you or possession of your body or whatnot. So that's interesting. Still trying to remember the story. Hold on 1 second. Hello. We're doing a show. How was your trip? So this one says, stay away from ruins of the Inquisition. This all happened about 5 years ago. One night, a few of my friends decided, after a night of hanging out, that we'd go on an adventure about 3 a.m. We took a ride about 50 miles to this old Spanish ruin in New Mexico. That was once the seat of Inquisition. I can't for the life of me remember what the place is called. So we jumped the front gate to the place and started exploring. One of my friends brought a flute with him, and he started playing it, and about 30 seconds into his mediocre playing, something started screaming really, really loud on the tops of the long, destroyed walls of the place. It was going from wall to wall really quick, screaming the most blood-curdling scream you've ever imagined. We noped the F out of there. One of my friends pissed his pants and even drove for a few hours to Bandelier National Monument, where we planned to camp out for the rest of the weekend. We got the Bandelier at probably like 6 or 7 a.m. and set up our camp. After a few hours, just talking about what the hell happened at the ruins, I went to take a piss behind a probably only like 300 feet from our camp. This is really poorly written. This is where everything starts getting a little fuzzy. I remember seeing 2 dust devils coming my way, and when I turned around again, 2 of my friends were there, and they were motioning me to follow them. I couldn't help but to follow them, like I was being pulled behind them in shackles. I followed them for what seemed like 10 or 15 minutes, and then I snapped out of it. These weren't my friends. They had bright red hair, with my friends' faces and cat eyes. Both these friends were brunette. I stopped walking, and they looked at me with probably the most terrifying gaze I've ever seen. Monsters in movies are nothing compared to this. I turned around and ran as fast as I could back to the way I came from. After like 5 minutes of full sprint, I got back to the rock that I pissed at and found our camp. Everyone was there, still sitting around talking, and didn't even notice that I was gone. I told them what happened with the look-alike Skinwalkers, and we packed up everything and left probably within 10 minutes and got the hell back to Albuquerque. They must have made a wrong turn at Albuquerque. That's scary. Nova's here. I just told him about our Skinwalker experience before that. Noise.
When did you get in it from?
Week ago. This one's called Tap Tap at the Window. But we will get to that here in a minute. We're going to go to break. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us tonight on We Are Paradox Media. And thanks for hanging out with me on Late Night in the Rockies. It's been great hanging out with you guys. I apologize for our guest, Chris Chappelle from Dark Hunters Paranormal. He couldn't show up tonight because of family issues, but family comes first, and we understand that. So thanks so much for hanging out with us and dealing with my shenanigans. And if you guys have any stories that you'd like to call in with, make sure you give us a call at 970-335-9596. That's 970-335-9596. If you have issues calling in on that number, just look me up on Skype under Tessa Thomas Peterson, and send me a little contact request on there, and we'll get you in. Good night, Rick. I hope you have a nice sleep. Oh, thanks so much. He said he enjoyed the storytelling. Yeah, just trying to entertain the masses. I was considering not doing the show tonight, but I'm glad I did, because I like hanging out with you guys. And then we also have the after party at the same number, which is 970-335-9596. Or you can call in. And yes, Moon, you can Skype in, because that's the Skype goes hand in hand with the Spreaker. So go ahead and Skype in with your story. I know you said you had some poetry that you wanted to share, so that would be awesome. Awesome to hear it. So I left off on a story here that was called Tap Tap at the Window. So I was a kid when this happened. My uncle and I were finishing up chopping, gathering firewood for my grandmother because it was getting dark, driving back on a dirt road at about 30 miles per hour, give or take 5 miles per hour. I had this awful sense of being watched. Before I could turn to look out my window on the passenger side, my uncle quickly shouted, "Don't." I completely froze. My heart felt like it was beating out of my chest, then completely stopped when I heard a tap tap on my window. My uncle sped up and was loudly praying in my native language. I didn't know what was going on and thought it was over till our truck suddenly dipped from the bed. My uncle then started saying, "Look at me and don't turn away," over and over. Then I heard it again, tap tap, but from the window behind me. It was getting harder for me to breathe, and I wanted to cry. A minute or two passed, and the truck dipped again. My uncle looked around and sighed. It was quiet besides the truck and the road. He looked at me and said, "We will ask your father to do a prayer in the morning, so the evil will forget our faces." Navajo to English equivalent. I remember curling up on the seat and just staring at the radio, watching the time, listening to my uncle sing an old prayer till we got to my grandmother's house. I called my uncle because I had a nightmare about that night. We talked about it for a bit. He said I didn't see faces, just eyes. Like brake lights you see on the road. It watched you, and this is again Navajo to English equivalent. Before hanging up, I tried joking with him about it. "Why didn't you just step on the brake when it was in the back?" No laughter, just a pause, because it wasn't alone. Ooh. Good night, Rick. Sleep well. Sweet dreams. So this one's called Convinced I Saw a Skinwalker. As many of you might already know, many Navajo people, including my own family, are very reluctant to speak about skinwalkers because it is believed to attract their attention. Well, I, however, grew up away from the Navajo Nation and was very naive about the subject. When it came to skinwalkers, I was an absolute skeptic. My mom used to tell a story of how back in the 80s when she lived with her siblings and my grandparents, still in Shiprock, but the southern outskirts, about how she and my aunt saw a skinwalker just outside their driveway under a streetlight. She described it as a black dog with dirty fur, a twisted noodle-like front leg, and these unnatural eyes with a soft burnt orange glow. Me, being my own closed-minded self, doubted every word, but I never said my doubts aloud. But these doubts totally changed last year when I went to my grandparents' house last October. Me and my family had just finished scouring the carnival at the Navajo Nation Fair and called it a night. The house was close enough where we could walk home in just 10 minutes, so we did. When we got there, it was about 9 at night, where we stayed up until about 2 catching up about family affairs and the local news. It was during that time I just decidedly opened my mouth and blurted out a question. "Hey, are skinwalkers real? Guys?" I asked. "You shouldn't be speaking about that," my grandma said, with almost a disturbed yell in her voice. So she and my grandfather both decided to go to bed. After being scolded by my mom, one of my aunts chimes in with a very cautious tone and says, "They are real, all right. Had a few start screaming outside of my trailer in Farmington just a few nights ago. Your cousin had nightmares the whole night and woke up crying that morning." Not wanting to push the discomfort any further, we all decided to go to bed. Now, the trailer home is pretty old, and it was really a really nice night. So we slept with the windows open with screens to prevent the bugs from coming in. Everyone had drifted off to sleep except me, because my mind was still going a million miles a minute about skinwalkers, and wondered if I would ever encounter one while here on the reservation. As a kid, I was told it's taboo to think about skinwalkers because I can still call their attention. That's when the ish totally hit the fan. Just as I was settling and finally getting relaxed for sleep, I started to hear something moving outside. I get up from the couch and start wandering over to the kitchen window. In the trailer, all of the rooms have the lights out, so the only visible light that I can see is from the front porch light out front. I was thankful for this because I told myself if it really was a skinwalker outside, then hopefully it wouldn't notice me seeing it. So I muster up the courage and I take a quick scan of outside. From the porch light, all I can see is the dusty ground and the vehicles that my family drove, along with some old metal trash cans that stood beside the road. Looking for about a good 5 seconds, I wasn't able to see anything, so I was getting ready to turn around and walk back to bed, thinking it was just a stray cat or something. Only have taken 2 steps, I hear that sound like a distorted scream coming from outside. Definitely close by. Fear rising, I look outside again, and there I see. A coyote-like figure was staring at my direction from behind the cars, just outside of the reach of the porch light. Only it looked awfully wrong, and gave off an evil vibe just from seeing it. It was gray, with very disheveled hair and a horrific orange-red soft glow that came from its eyes. I noped the hell out and ran back to the room. It was at this moment I had begun to also notice an awful stench in the air that smelled like rotting meat. I started trying to wake up my mom, who was like, "Oh my God, it's almost 3 a.m. What do you want?" I immediately began in a shaken voice, "There's something scary outside." Then she said, now annoyed because I woke her up, "Ugh, it's probably just a stray animal or something. It's the res. Animals wander all the time at night." She obviously wasn't getting the drift of what I was saying, so I screamed, "There's some Blair Witch Project-ish going on outside, Ma." That got her attention. What the hell are you talking about?" she said. Then we heard it. The thing outside started making more of its dreadful-like screaming and started what sounded like thrashing outside on the ground. Hear that? That's what I'm talking about. So both her and I got back up, looked outside the window, and the coyote thing was making its way to the door. It walked with an odd limp and dragged its back right leg as if it was handicapped. We could hear it start to scratch against the door and make this odd, muffled moaning sound. My mom went and got my dad, and they both started shouting in Navajo all sorts of words, telling the thing to go away. and saying it's not welcome here. Well, all this commotion was enough to get the rest of the trailer up as they came out into the hallway. The only thing my mom did was turn to them and said, "Skinwalker," while proceeding to point to the door, noises still happening. Apparently, they already knew exactly what to do as my grandfather got out a handgun from a drawer and a bag of ashes. He coated a few bullets and loaded them into the gun and went straight to the door, yelling out more Navajo that was too fast for me to comprehend. He swung open the door and fired twice. Nothing. The thing managed to escape before my grandpa could put a bullet in it. "That's the fastest one I've ever seen," said my grandpa. Next thing you know, my aunts and my parents are freaking out about what just happened, saying stuff like, "What if it comes back tomorrow?" And "It saw us. Does that mean we're targets now?" Afterwards, my grandparents calmed everyone down, myself included, saying we'll be fine, and we all went to bed around 3-ish. Morning comes, and my grandparents call one of their neighbors and explain to them what happened. Apparently, one of them is a medicine man who used to partake in yabi cheese, Navajo ceremonies used for healing and curing sickness, and came over to bless each family member and the grounds outside. So apparently, if it sees you, it could find you later on. Pretty freaky. This one says... Sorry, I got a message here. Okay. Amy, if you have him on your list, you should be able to add him to the conversation, and I'd love to meet your friend. For sure. Alright, so we have a phone call. Hola, Domino's.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing, Mooney?
Tonight?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. How you been?
Good. Just hanging in there. How are you?
Yeah, you sound good. The show's been good.
It's been interesting for sure. I hate when guests can't show up, but the show must go on.
I swear. Well, Dave Chappelle's a stand-up guy. I'm sure he'll reschedule.
Yeah, he did for the 28th. Chris Chappelle. I wish Dave Chappelle would come on. That'd be fun.
I swear. Wouldn't he be a great guest?
Oh, yeah. I might try to get him on here.
I swear. He's originally from Ohio. He might even be around here somewhere. And but yeah, great show so far. I've been enjoying the stories, and especially that last one you just had about the Skinwalker. Most of the Skinwalker stories they always talk about are always talking about a 7 or 8 foot creature and the skin hanging off of it and everything like that. But Skinwalkers to me are really actual animals, and to me they're going to be an animal that you see around, and they're going to be almost like roadkill. It's a embodied spirit that has picked up this dead animal or whatever like that and hosted it, and now it's bringing it back alive, reanimating it, put it that way. And to me, that's more of what a Skinwalker is. And so that last story kind of embodied that.
Yeah.
Because everyone else always talks about it the opposite way.
Well, there's 2 different variations. So in order to be a Skinwalker, you have to take a life. And some people do it intentionally and take, like, the dark side. And other people, it happens accidentally, as if in, like, childbirth or whatnot, their mother dies. So therefore they took that person's life. So it's like a religion within the Navajo Nation. And like I said, there's light ones and there's dark ones, and the ones you're talking about are, like I had a story I was trying to remember earlier, and now I do, of a couple, and they were running and playing around the highway, and then they got chased down into this crevasse, basically, a cliff with mesas on each side where they couldn't go anywhere. And once they got to them, it was a male and a female, and they had face paint on, and they were naked, of course, and they didn't face any charges because they were basically practicing their religion. But there are others out there that are darker. And the one I saw didn't really have the skin hanging off. It was just really pale looking. And like its stomach was so big it looked like it ate somebody. It was pretty freaky. And its arms were distended below its knees. But yeah, I grew up in the Four Corners area and mostly had Navajo friends. A few Ute friends as well. But yeah, you learn all kinds of different stories of their native history and such. And skinwalkers are pretty interesting to say the least.
Well, what I've saw in the past, what I've seen in the past, and what I consider to be, for me, skinwalkers have been animals that are always looking very disheveled and out of place where they're at, and acting very uncharacteristically, and downright wrong, just plain wrong, and when you see them, you get that feeling, and usually you have the feeling before you see them that there's something's going on. That's why you look toward them, and that's why that story there finally really touched home with me, because it's all the other stories I've ever heard people talking about, it's always like it's almost like somebody's wearing a skin, like a wolf's head over their head and stuff like that, and the person's like a really pale person, and like you said, and like they're it's like their guts overly filled, and they're partially the other animal and stuff like that. To me, it's always it's not been that way. It's been that the animal, it's been an actual animal, and like a wolf or something when I've been out in the woods, and or even just out in an area. So that was something that really I enjoyed that story, and that touched me there. So it kind of landed on me there.
Yeah, I can agree with you. Go ahead.
Things kind of started off on your show tonight a little off balance. Let's take a minute here and just can we take a minute and clear the air?
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Certainly.
Okay, let's everyone think about something positive, white light or black light, anything that you think of. There's nothing wrong with whatever you think of that grounds you and brings out positive thoughts. Just take a moment here, concentrate with us all. The show's been going good so far. We're getting a better vibe. Everything's going well. Let's keep it going. Let's all clear everything of negative energy. Lord, help us. Help us tonight, which is basically a thin layer tonight. After last night's moon and tonight's moon, the veil is very thin. We're looking to have a good evening. Any spirits that may visit us, make it a positive encounter. Let us reunite with relatives and friends and pets. Good things from the past and from the present. Just let everything be positive and have this night end on a good note. Thank you for the goodness in our lives. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you for that, Mooney.
Hey, when I saw the moon tonight, last night's moon just had that pinkish and orange tone to it. And but when the moon rose tonight, it was just so white, and which was just such a distinction, which was so strange, just from last night to tonight. The color change, it was incredible, and such a beautiful moon out there tonight and bright. Um, and last night we had super bad thunderstorms. The moon rose and it got up nice. Then all of a sudden, for 6 hours we had horrible thunderstorms, and so the energy last night was just outrageous. But anyways, I wanted to touch on that and bring that up about the moon. It was a very powerful moon, and tonight's the energy here is just outrageous.
Yeah, it was awesome. Lily was out there and she's like, "Oh, look at it. It's orange like the sun." And she went and grabbed her brother and brought him out. But yeah, when it first came up, it was pretty big. And then as it went into the sky, it got smaller and smaller. But yeah, tonight, like you said, it's a much brighter white. It's more of a pure moon. And I wonder what makes the color do that. Do you think it's the relation to how close it is to Earth that causes that effect, or?
Well, so that's something that I have normally when you see the moon look like that, it's usually because of the atmosphere, and you've got, different types of particulates and stuff like that in the air. But from last night to tonight, how does that do that on a regular basis? So, and because of it being closer, it can't be that much difference in one night. If anything, it should be just a little bit of a lighter pink or a lighter orange.
Right.
But for it to change from that one color to totally bright white in one night is just outrageous to me. So, for them to be able to call that and for that to happen, boom, one night to the next night like that, that is incredible. And, I'd like to look into that. That's something I really should look into, because I took astronomy. I took like 3/4 of that in college, and I really should know more about that than I do. And I actually need to kind of look into that and get an answer for that. Maybe I'll get an answer for that and come back on next week's show and give you a technical answer why that might be, if there is an answer. But that's kind of bad on my behalf, because I really should know. But
Hey,
anyways, I wrote
learning.
a couple poems today.
Awesome.
I really was pumped up with power today. This house is like a portal to nowhere, and I was just full of energy. So here's my first one. It's called The Shepherd. Here we go. They call him Bo Peep. He dresses you up as one of his sheep. He will tend you to just right. To merely watch is quite a fright. This will continue on till first light. That is when the shadows tug at his might. Then it is back into his corner until night. That's the first one.
I like it.
That was a little strange. Okay, the next one is called Knowledge. And, okay. The days they are crazing, and you're shriveling like a raisin. All the while it's sending chills like razors into your bones. So you run deep into the holler, wearing that ruby collar. Longing for warmth you once had before. Relief shall not come now. No moist towel or champagne flute. For your mouth or for your snoot. Nothing there to refute. Autumn's here in all its glory, with fiery colors and the smoky clouds above us. Our dreams have robbed us of wonder and pureness of truth. Now we cling to a stone for warmth, once covered in moss but eaten away. Soon the hammer will bang no more for you today. So gather the acorns briskly, for no, they are not to plant.
Awesome. And I love your
There,
use of words. Like, you even wrote a poem for my wonky cat when he passed away, and it really touched my heart. It was really awesome to read, and it really touched on so many bases.
yeah, and these are copyrighted, by the way. I just want to say that to make sure everybody knows. But um, they're they're kind of dark, but they were there's quite a like I said, there's quite an energy today, and um so I'm kind of looking forward to tonight. We're getting into another half an hour till midnight, so I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen. There's been so much movement and activity in this house for the last 3 or 4 months. It's just crazy. Even with all the cats are out right now, they've been going outside all summer and staying out. Some of them been staying out all night and everything like that. And even when they're all outside, there's things banging around, falling off the counters, um, moving around in the house. Some of the stuff's just gone, um, and that's mainly because I've been getting rid of stuff in this house, and I'm pretty sure that's my mother's ticked off that I'm throwing stuff away and giving it
I was
away,
about to
and
say, she's probably like, no, I wanted to keep that, but you can't take it with you when you go. So it's hard.
yeah, and so there's been so much activity in here, I just don't even care anymore. Um, when I hear the bangs and stuff, I don't get up. I don't even move. Um, I just go right back to bed. I've got things set up, so I'm not worried of if someone breaks in, I'll know the difference. But um, it's different from things clanging around and dropping around and all this other stuff that's going on. And I've had over a dozen like the barbecue type lighters disappear. The ones that I light incense with and candles.
Yeah.
Um, you know how big those are for them to just disappear in the house. Um, they're too big for the cats to carry around or knock around. If it was a little Bic lighter or something like that, I could see that. But I keep buying these the big barbecue lighters so I can do my candles and incense with, and they keep just going. And and that's also what I light my sage with, and my wood, my what's the name of that wood
Palo
that
Santo?
we do for yeah, Palo Santo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I do my cleaning, I haven't even cleaned in here anymore. I stopped doing that 4 months ago. It was just useless. Um, I'd clean at night. It would be good for 3 or 4 hours, and then they'd be right back at it, start up gradually, and then by the next 2 nights afterwards, it'd be back to the same. Um, and this house has just gone off the charts. And usually I keep like the basement door closed because there's always been other spirits downstairs. And now I've even opened up the basement door, just to let everybody walk around, do whatever they want. I don't care anymore because there's just too much activity going on in this house. And the only thing I care about is they stay away from my bedroom.
Yeah, I know you were telling me shortly after your mom had passed, I think it was like the same week or something, but you heard the bags or something going on, and you looked in this box where there was things stored and they were coming out, and it was in the shape of your mother's face. That was pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, that was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. Was um, it was about 3 a.m., give or take about 7, 8 minutes, one way or the other. I was woken up in the middle of the night. Um, I sat up on the edge of my bed. I looked down the hallway. There was one of the cats. It was my mom's favorite cat. She was sitting right there in the middle of the hallway, and there was a box with some blue bags, the shopping bags, the little plastic ones sitting there, and there were some items that I'd boxed up from the living room sitting right next to it, and there was some stuff inside of that box also that I'd packed up in there, and for some reason I'd look, was sitting there looking at it, and all of a sudden I saw the bag start to move. And I kept looking at it, and the cat's sitting there, and she's not moving. She's just sitting there cleaning herself. And the bag keeps expanding, and the next thing I know, it's starting to form what looks like to be a little point. And then it starts filling out further and further, and it starts to round off. And the next thing I know, I realize it's forming a face. And then I realized with the shape of the hair and the shape of the nose and the cheekbones and everything that gets back and the ears and all, that it's my mother's face. And she's looking right there at that cat, her favorite cat. It's right in front of it. And as I finally got up and walked down to the doorway of the bedroom, she turned her head and she saw me. And at that point there, then she just collapsed down in the bag. The bag just collapsed down back into the box. And the only reason I could see all of this is because it was right next to the bathroom, and I have one of those salt lamps. The Himalayan salt lamp is right there in the bathroom, so the light was shining the glow was shining right there into the hallway from that salt lamp. So if it wouldn't have been for that lamp, I wouldn't have been able to hardly see anything in there. But because of that lamp, that whole thing was illuminated right there. And so that was one of the trippiest moments I've ever had with a spirit. And I still to this day, I can still see that image burned into my brain. The whole thing is like a video that keeps replaying.
Yeah, it's definitely something you'll never forget, for sure.
No, there's no way I'll forget that. And but yeah,
I don't think I will either. That's one of those amazing stories. You're like, this is the most amazing story I've ever heard. Like, I've never heard a story like that, Mooney. That was just so amazing and intricate, and just her face coming out of there, like, oh my goodness, with the kitties surrounding it, her little levties.
I would have loved it if the cat would have heard it and realized it and turned around. I would love to see what the cat would have done, but she didn't know. She just kept licking on her belly and stuff. So anyways, your story about the ball of lightning has always got me.
Well, there's 3 different ones. Are you talking about the one when I was a kid, or the one from 2012?
The one I think it's 2012. The one that came through the house.
Yeah, that one was when I was a kid, and we actually had a thunder and electrical storm going on. All the power was knocked out, and we're sitting around in a circle in the living room together and telling ghost stories and just talking about different random things. And all of a sudden, my mom points over to where the power pole is, and in midsection, it makes kind of like a cross shape. In the very middle of the cross shape was this ball of fire. And all of a sudden it shot towards the house, and you could hear this like loud clap. And then it went under the house, came up through the middle of the living room, and my mom's telling us all to be quiet before it showed up. And as it came up, I was still talking to my mom, so she covered my mouth. And then it moved slowly over to in the dining room kitchen area, and then shot down the hallway towards my brother, who had went to grab the clothes out of the dryer so they wouldn't wrinkle. My mom was gonna hang them up or whatever, but he collapsed on the floor and it went out the back of the house. And I think that was supernatural as far as it was a part of nature. And you hear of these fireballs or balls of lightning or whatnot, but it did look like an actual fireball. You could see the fire coming off of it. The other two I saw were enclosed fire, and the one that was high above us looked really small, but when it was down about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, it looked like it was 3 or 4 feet in circumference and 3 or 4 feet off the ground at a slow walking pace behind our house. Kinsey and Nova and I saw it as the same thing. It looked kind of like it was in a glass globe with liquid fire moving clockwise, red and orange and yellow. And I almost stepped outside, but then I was like, no, like, what if it takes me or whatever? I have a newborn son. He was only 2 months old, I think, at this point. But yeah, I almost stepped out, and then I stepped back in, tried to get my phone to work to take a picture. I couldn't do that, so I called the family over, and Kinsey and Nova and I saw it the same way. To Vern, it appeared as like a globe, like I was saying, but with a large-sized bat flapping its wings at a very slow rate of speed. So that was strange too, that he had seen something different than we did.
That kind of thing is just incredible to me. The energy moving around like that. I love that kind of stuff, and that's why that kind of thing is just, and I, being around electrical technician and engineering and all that kind of stuff for my whole life. That's why, that kind of stuff just gets me to the utmost. I know my mom told me a story about when she was younger. She was sitting in front of the window in a rocking chair, and during a thunderstorm, and the lightning had actually struck the window and bounced off, and just scared the ever living crap out of her. But she was very lucky that it didn't bust through it or anything like that. But I remember she telling me about that. That's one of the few things she ever shared to me about anything, that ever happened in her life about something like that. But
I think it was Sleepy Dave was telling a story where he was at school and there was this kid out there with one of those yellow rubberish rain jackets on, and he was, stomping through the puddles and stuff. He probably had rain boots on, and all of a sudden lightning hit him, but it bounced right off. And I'm wondering, is it because he was wearing that protective layer of rubber, or was it just because he wasn't meant to die that day? That was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah,
to me.
you got to figure, and yeah, I've been, even with all that rubber and everything like that, when you have water dripping off you and going all the way down, it's a crapshoot of whether or not you're going to be insulated or not. And because lightning still runs down everything and shoots where it wants to run down and shoot through anything. But yeah, it is incredible. I still, those stories about people being struck by lightning and living through it is just outrageously incredible. And some of them get screwed up, some of them don't. You see what it does to the trees. Oh, when I saw that video where they show where it struck the water, and then all into this little cove, and where everything comes back up and blows up from the bottom of the cove there. All that, some of those, something like that, it's just incredible how it shows how strong lightning and everything is. It's just outrageous, for us to be able to catch it on video now and to be able to watch it, when before they could never watch it, in slow motion and stuff. Um, it just in stuff Tesla used to do in his labs and stuff.
Tesla's my hero. We actually have a
Oh,
town right outside of Rico, Colorado, and it's actually a community, not a town, because they don't have stores and stuff, but it's run off of Tesla electricity, and they're very protective of it because, if the government or whoever finds out, they'll probably take it away and make them get on the grid.
yeah.
I drove through there
But he
and...
was.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say he was trapped one time in his own lab. Did you know about that?
No, tell me more.
He was trapped and it was doing an experiment, and excuse me, he didn't wait for his assistant to be there. He went ahead and kicked the thing on, and he got trapped between the where the where the things were arcing across, and he turned it up a little too high, and he wasn't able to get to shut it off. So he was stuck in one little place, and he was getting zapped. And if his assistant hadn't come back in at the right moment and stuff like that, he would most likely have died at that point. But he had cranked his own machine up too high. He got stuck in that one little place, and he was getting zapped intermittently, and it was just kept getting stronger and stronger on him. And it was, that might be one to get and share on the website. I'll look that one up, and I'll try to find a clip of that. I can put it on the website for everybody.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
is a very because that would have been, losing somebody like him at that point would have been just awful. And there's so many things that he did, and people talk about it like they're urban legends, but they're not. They're things he actually did in real life. About whenever he did that. When you get the actual the frequency, what is it, the spatial frequency of a building, when he created that machine that did that harmonic resonance, and he almost took that whole building down. That was something that actually happened. Everything has a harmonic resonance, like a bridge. You've seen that bridge that swayed back and forth way back in the, I don't know if that was the 30s or 40s or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was one of those things where the wind had caught the proper frequency of the bridge, and when they talk about in the Bible and stuff, when they talk about Jericho's trumpets or whatever it was, they basically think about they'd marched around. If it was true, the thing was it probably was because they marched around the fort, around the building, the structure, the walls of the structure itself for so many days, and because of the rhythm of the marching, they had the correct rhythm, that they found the harmonic balance of the wall, and that's what actually destroyed the wall, because it was getting the rhythm was actually destroying the wall by making it vibrate. And if you find the right vibration, you can take down any hard structure, basically.
Yeah, it's called directional energy weapons, and a lot of people think that's one of the weapons that were used at 9/11 because, the fire is nowhere near certain people, but at the same time, people are taking their clothes off and jumping and all kinds of crazy stuff when they're nowhere near the fire. Why are they taking their clothes off? Why is this happening? And it's directional energy weapons. That's why when you see these huge mounds of this building falling, it just disintegrates. It's not on fire. It's not colliding with anything else. But this directional energy weapon and other things that they used that day, like the directional energy weapon, is just making it fall into dust. That's why the rubble wasn't that high. Like, it was a pretty small pile for as large as that those buildings were. But that's one of the things
And
that
yeah,
Tesla created, was the directional energy weapon, and he tried to keep that from people because he knew that it wasn't going to be used for anything good. But when he passed, at first I had heard that all but 3 crates were taken. But then just the other day I heard all but 20 were taken. Do you have any knowledge on that? Like, how many actually made it to where they were supposed to?
I don't know the exact number, but I do know that they came in and they just robbed the place. And the FBI came into the place and they raided it. They raided his stuff. They went through everything, and everything that looked um, like any kind of scientific stuff and not just gibberish. They went and they just took it all. And then after that, when they released it, anything that they could, they kept everything secret that was any of any real um, of any real importance, and they didn't release anything but just bits and pieces of stuff that was already common knowledge. And so his stuff was wrapped up and tied up so badly in the government. They kept everything, and they just, anything that they could keep, they kept. And to this day, his stuff is still top secret and beyond. And we're still living off his technology. Everything we're using right now is off his technology. This whole everything we're using, all the wireless stuff, all the broadband, excuse me, not broadband, but Wi-Fi, all the cell phone stuff, cellular technology, everything we use basically in our modern day stuff is all that stuff's from him. They were all just stuff that he had. He had all this stuff designed out and laid out and everything like that, but they didn't have the parts and everything to make it real. It wasn't until in these recent years that we were able to go ahead and design the equipment to utilize his designs. And so that's we're living off of Tesla's his designs and his inventions right now. And so that's why they took everything away and hid it up. We're still feeding off all that stuff, and we will be feeding off it for decades and decades to come. So when anybody talks about that stuff, you just rest assured you haven't, people haven't seen it. They haven't seen it all. They will never see it all. The United States government got it. That was just plain and simple. And that's not a secret. That's straight out. The government will tell you they took it.
Yeah, well, that way they can keep us under their thumbs and make us work an everyday job to pay our bills and stay in debt, and what we do every day as Americans, instead of using free energy. Like, that's the way Tesla created it. And it was all for the well-being of humans, so you could actually have a full and fruitful life where you're spending time with your family and pursuing arts and music or whatever inspires you. Instead, we're basically slaves to the government and under their control, and parents have to work multiple jobs just to pay rent and utilities. Like, it's just insane.
Tesla, with all the energy that's in the air right now from people, from the cell phone towers, from the radio towers, the TV towers, all this energy just being pumped out from these devices and stuff like that. If you captured it, pulled it in, you could be running equipment off of it right now. It's we use, you can use devices for using your own, Wi-Fi equipment that puts off power to go ahead and charge your cell phone and stuff like that from anywhere in a room or whatever like that. All this stuff puts off so much power, we're pumping into the air, plus whatever the Earth's putting off and everything, that you can go ahead and just capture it and if you know how to capture it, you can go ahead and utilize that to run whatever you want to run. But you have to be able to capture it, and some of it's in small amounts, some of it's in larger amounts. All these when you talk about a radio station that's putting off 50,000 watts, and you're a block away from the tower, or 5 blocks, or half a mile away from the tower, it's putting off 50,000 watts of energy. Well, it's free energy. So why aren't you getting some of it? It's sending it all out into everywhere. You got a cell phone tower that's pumping out all that power. Okay? Why aren't you capturing some of it? These things are pumping all that energy out into the air. Only thing we need to do is capture it. But we're not trying to. We got, you can get antennas out there and start trying to pull down the energy. That's what we need to be doing, but we're not even thinking about trying to do it.
Right.
And everything else, that the problem is there's so much interference, and the interference cancels out the stuff. And that's the problem that we run into all the time, is that when we try to capture it, the noise in the system turns it into nothing. So what we have to do is go ahead and be able to get that energy cleanly, so we can turn it into a direct power source. And that's the problem. Why aren't we working on that? Or have we already done that? Well, guess what? Tesla did it.
Right.
Way back in the...
We do have to go to our second break. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome, everybody out there in the Para Asylum, listening to We Are Paradox Media at Late Night in the Rockies. I'm your host, TessaTNT, and right now I'm joined by Moonlight. Hey, Mooney, welcome back. Thanks for calling in and hanging out with me.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you were just saying that you wanted to talk about
To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences.
Indeed.
TTS AOAAS. And people always leave off the OAAS part. And that's the biggest thing they need to remember is of arts and sciences. Because this is like if you don't remember that part, when it comes down here in a while, it's going to be, you know what? We told you about it. It was in our name. Okay? They're going to tell you, well, it's of arts and sciences, and it's, we didn't say we knew everything about this and that we were doing this. It was just, it's an arts program, and it's a science program, and we're out here to find out. So, when everyone gets down to the point and they find out it's it's just a commercial venture to put on a TV show, and then on the flip side, they find out that it's a PR stunt from the government to help get funding for bringing the space program into the mainstream, the real space program, the one that we started about 50 years ago. The secret space program, and now they want to go ahead and bring parts of it out in the mainstream so we can build real ships and stuff like that we've already built, but I mean, show them off to the public, some of the old stuff, and get Congress to cough up some big bucks.
Right.
And all the stuff that they did with when they were rolling out these little these videos and stuff, and they put them on Fox and CNN and ABC and NBC and CBS, and you notice they put up TTSAOAS and the Pentagon together in the same title of the video. And it was just all like a big PR stunt, and they put it up as a package. Whatever they were handed by these guys, they put them up totally, to show the little video. They didn't edit anything. They didn't say anything about it. They just presented it in a package like they were given. And whenever you see a news organization present a package from something that's news, then it's fake. They're being handed something to do for propaganda. If you were part of the news, if you were in a car wreck and you handed the video and your description of how you had the car wreck and everything like that to the local news station, and you said, here, run my video about my car wreck. I don't want you to show your clips and stuff, and I don't want you to do your own investigation. I just want you to run my video about this wreck and my discussion about it and stuff like that. I don't want you to do your own investigation and stuff. Just do my stuff and present it the way I give it to you. That's PR. That's propaganda. Okay?
Fake news.
And that's what they were doing. They were putting out propaganda. And these news organizations weren't covering news. They were putting out propaganda on the news. So when that happens, something is up. Something is not right. And that's what people didn't pick up on. And so you can know from the get-go that this stuff is toxic. And they haven't showed us anything. They've only showed us some little blips and stuff, and this and that, and people are like, oh, look at that, look at that. Well, there ain't nothing there. And then they put on a TV show with the money they got from people. They used the money to go ahead and produce some TV series for the History Channel to tell people about stuff that we've known for 50, 60 years. What's the dealio? You could have done a better job than that, Tessa.
Right.
You would have gave them updated information.
Here
Okay?
is the step-by-step protocol, and here's what happened. Yeah, I don't understand why they're hiding everything, and I think they're trying to do the slow come-out thing with the History Channel and other stations where they're playing alien and UFO-friendly things and different sightings and crashes and predicaments, so on and so forth. But maybe it's a slow way to get people to accept it, and then all of a sudden they're going to be like, yeah, it's real. It's been going on for years, and sorry we hid it from you, but we didn't want you running around like chickens with your head cut off or whatnot, you know? I don't know. I don't understand the government. But yeah, they're feeding...
Well, you just said it right there.
Yeah, and they're feeding different people
You don't understand the government when we're talking about To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences.
Well, yeah, but they're feeding everybody the information that they want put out there. Like, they're all just... It seems to me like puppets. Like, everything I'm hearing... Okay, I've heard that before. Thanks for reiterating it. But, I mean... What do you think about it? Do you think they're doing what they should be doing, or do you think they're puppets just like everyone else who originally came out with things and then all of a sudden they're saying, oh, no, that never happened, or that wasn't a true artifact of script that I got from NASA or, you know, whoever else?
Well, I mean, you know, when you go to the carnival and they start spinning plates up on the sticks, and the guy's doing one plate up there, and then he's got 2 plates, and he got 3 plates, he got 4 plates. So the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science has got 4 plates going up there. Okay, and now, ooh, look at those plates. And now everyone's starting to get bored by those 4 plates. So then they go ahead and they add in, okay, we got an ex-senator now up there. He's talking about stuff. And now the president chimes in and says, hey, look, we're trying to get funding for a government program for us, you know, for a space program. I want to do a space program. Okay? Mm-hmm. Well, we already had that space program that they did. They just took it over and gave it a new name. Okay? That program actually existed.
Right.
They slid it over and gave it a new name now.
Wasn't it from the era of Ronald Reagan, or was it before?
Yeah, it was from back in that era. Reagan had it back in there, and it was Space Command it was before, I think it was.
Star Wars.
And so now it's like Space Net, I think it is, all one word now, or something. I'd have to look it up. I'm sorry, I didn't memorize that. I posted it on Facebook, but anyways, so now they put up another plate. Okay, they got the ex-senator, and then now they got another plate. Trump's up there. Now they got big journalist up there from Nevada. One that's always breaking news about UFOs. So they put another plate up there. And all these plates are going up there, so we're looking at all these plates. And what do? When we're starting up looking at the plates, another guy is behind us picking all of our wallets out of our back pockets. Mm-hmm. Okay, and while they're picking the wallets out of our back pockets, they're also moving 12 elephants through the room behind us. And nobody noticed it because they're all looking at those plates.
Right.
So it's just a big show going on to get the money for Congress, get Congress to go ahead and put up the money, and that they can go ahead and hide the real show that's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of things out there like that going on. What was it, MJ12 or something like that? And there's so many different things behind behind
Oh yeah,
that
MJ.
whole...
Yeah, MJ-12's been going on for what 1950?
Yeah,
So that's going
Eisenhower
on,
and, oh,
yeah, 50, 60, 70 years now. Isn't that wrapping up about 70 years? Um, See, these programs that have been out there so long, and it's time to start pulling them in and tying them in together and giving them some new names and getting them some better funding and getting them an umbrella so they fall in some of these other systems. Um, we've got to get them to answer to the same people. We've got to get them to fall in under the same umbrella. There are just too many of them spread out, too many little generals and too many heads and chiefs. Um, it's time to start pulling them all together and, getting them under that one world government kind of stuff. And, even if they're only under just, the United States, we got to get them to all follow, somebody, because there's just too many of them. And they don't answer to the same people because they're too compartmentalized. They got them in so many different places, people don't even know where they're at. And they don't talk to each other. And that's what we ran into for 9/11. We knew what was going on. We knew all about it ahead of time. But the departments didn't talk to each other, so they couldn't do anything about it. Well, that supposedly was the deal. But we knew about it ahead of time, that's for sure. We could have stopped it, no matter if we did it or not. Part of our intelligence knew, so they could have done something to stop the whole thing from happening, but they couldn't talk to the other groups, even if they knew the other group was the one that was doing it.
yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions and things that don't add up from that day, and I just found it really convenient that George W., instead of being in the White House that day, was in a classroom reading books to kids, and all of a sudden he gets this important message. It just all seemed like a really big setup to me. And I don't know. It's just crazy how all these things happen. Like I was saying, the energy-directed weapons and the way that this building falling looked more like a demolition than a building actually falling under undue stress and weight, so on and so forth. I don't know. It's just crazy. You hear about the vehicles that showed up earlier that morning, all these black vehicles showing up and picking up who knows what from the underside of the building. Gold, I guess, was kept under there. Fort
Gold,
Knox.
stamps.
Yeah.
Files, information. But the other thing is that it wasn't even 18 hours after the General Accounting Office came out, and Cheney had to go ahead and admit that we had like $2.5 to $3 trillion that we couldn't account for in the Pentagon. They didn't know where the money went. And then 18 hours later, after he tells them that the Pentagon needs the answer for where that money went, 18 hours later, the Twin Towers come down. I mean, that's a hell of a coincidence.
Indeed.
And then they never talked about the money afterwards.
No. That was
That
just
was just
swept
totally
under the
forgotten.
rug.
And everything after that point was, you couldn't talk about stuff like that, because if you mentioned anything about things like that, you were then not a patriot.
Mm-hmm.
You were against the government. And you couldn't ask questions, because if you asked questions, you were anti-American.
Right.
So...
Well, I got really upset this year because, we were all posting about 9/11 and such, and there's so many people out there that are like, the whole thing was a hoax. Like, no, it wasn't. Like, people actually did die. And It was a real tragedy for all of us, and so many people are still dealing with it every day that were there firsthand or lost somebody that was lost in this perilous thing. But for people to think the whole thing was fake and a hoax and that it didn't really happen, it really did. Like, there were thousands of lives lost, and it was really sad for us as Americans that that this happened for whatever reason that they needed it to. But it wasn't a hoax. It did happen, and there are lives to remember, people to remember that were lost that day. But yeah,
Exactly, and that's part of the thing, is that the immediate emotional response when someone says something about something like that is the same way when we talk about have our political discussions. They don't take enough time to let somebody finish the sentence and understand what they just said. They already have an answer before they even finish speaking. The problem is we lost so many people that day, and we're losing more people than died that day afterwards from people who are dying and have died from cleaning it up. And the toxicity and everything they got into the lungs of everybody, and they were cleaning and trying to help rescue people.
mm-hmm.
Those people are still dying, and so many of them have died. And that's the real extra tragedy on all this, and how we're taking care of them and not taking care of them is another huge tragedy.
Well, it's very normal for our government to deny things like PTSD and so many other things that have been around, and they are finally saying, yeah, this exists, but look at how many veterans that we've lost to suicide and other things because they denied it. With 9/11, they were denying people for so long because of different, like lung or cancer or different other things that they were getting from being there, like you said, on ground zero and helping, trying to retrieve bodies and so on. But it's very normal for our government to cover up things and deny things until finally, after so many lives are lost, they're like, okay, well, yeah, this really does exist and let's help these people. But it's just insane, really, how it works.
Well, right after it happened, they falsified the reports and stuff, and for the CDC or whoever was in charge about reporting about the toxicity of the dust right after, for the public and everybody else, cleaning it up, saying that it was not harmful for them going back in to clean it up, because they didn't want people to be, they didn't want it to look like people could not go down to the lower part of Manhattan and down in that area. They didn't want the terrorists to think they won, this and that and the other thing, which was just so silly. So they wanted everyone to feel like they could go about their normal lives again and just go about, living everywhere they lived down there and stuff like that, when they should have told people the truth. So you could have really got in there and done a toxic cleanup, and the way it should have been done.
Well, even people living in the area who were in the cloud and continue to live there where the dust had settled and where it's continued to be, kicked up due to the cleanup, like those people should have been evacuated as well. But,
yeah.
They just turn the blind eye to it and continue to add to the body count, It's much higher now than it was in the beginning.
And so I mean that's the sadness and everything, and the respect for the dead and for the sick. Truly the sadness and everything for that, and my respect for the people who went in there and fought for everything to try to help people.
Yeah. Love and light.
Incredible amount of respect.
Prayers for those that did help with the cleanup and those that are still dealing with the loss of people that day. But this hour I was wanting to talk about UFO crashes and such, which we kind of kicked off on that, but there's a story here, and I'm not sure if you're privy to it, but April 17th, 1897, a crash in Aurora, Texas, and it was a cigar-shaped UFO supposedly crashed into a windmill belonging to Judge J.S. Proctor of Aurora, Texas. The incident was reported in the April 19th edition of the Dallas Morning News. 2 days after the crash occurred, it claimed the pilot of the ship was not an inhabitant of this world. Supposedly, the pilot's remains were buried in an unmarked grave at a local cemetery, and the ship was partially buried with the pilot. The rest of it is said to have been dumped down a well. Barbara Brammer, a former mayor of Aurora, claims the whole thing was a hoax crafted in order to save Aurora. The town was suffering from a series of unfortunate events that included a fire, the local cotton crop dying out, a fever epidemic, and the cancellation of a planned railroad into town. The hoax put Aurora back on the map, but the events of that April still haven't been fully disproven.
That is to me, it's one of the best documented UFO crashes of all time, and it's one of the most just overlooked ones. They actually had a body that was buried there, and then it was moved around, and part of it was dug up. They had metal from it. What happened to all this is just incredible. How things got moved around on that site and everything, and it was still to this day, there's so much that can be done in that area that should be done. The question is, why haven't we done anything? And it's any real, I know that they've done they've been some investigations and stuff out there, but why hasn't the government gone out there and, I guess everybody has rights and stuff like that, and bodies have to be, before anything can be dug up, the families have rights and stuff like that, but they did a shell game and supposedly moved this body around.
Yeah, it'd be cool sad. If somebody, would go out there and investigate with one of these underground detectors that show where things are, and perhaps you could find an unmarked grave. But like you were saying, they've moved it around so many times. Perhaps they buried it on top of somebody else, where it wouldn't be seen by people looking for an unmarked grave, which a lot of those exist anyhow in a lot of cemeteries, but that'd be an interesting investigation.
Yeah, and they had done, some investigating out there, and they'd found a spot where it was metal in an area where they said it was originally buried. And when they went back to investigate it again, they found that there was a disturbance and the metal was missing. So they suspected that somebody had stuck a pipe down in there and dug out the piece of metal itself in a core sample. Took a core sample type thing and took that piece of metal out, which is sad. Most of this was done because of just basically for personal religious reasons or whatever, for the people in the town decided to do it that way. But yeah, they gave it a Christian burial, which was good and nice, and I applaud the way they went ahead and took respect for the body of whatever the thing was, whether it was human or alien or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's still a being, a living being.
Yeah, they took the time to give it a burial, a decent burial and everything. And I just wish that they would have allowed it to have the people that was there now. I just wish they would have allowed it to have an examination, but they decided not to allow that to happen. And the body had been moved, and then it had been tampered with. So, making sure that nothing could ever really be, investigated on it. So
that's weird.
Yeah, I hated that situation because it was one of the best documented cases ever. Um, and I truly that's one of the ones that always caught my eye, and there was just so much information on it from the get go and in the town, and it had a body and everything, and then to come back out and the town folk had just kept messing with it and messing with it till there was nothing left to investigate afterwards. So that was just sad to me.
Right. Well, there's another case here that happened May 11th, 1950 in McMinnville, and it's called the McMinnville UFO, and it happened in Oregon. And it says, one of the most disputed and often studied UFO events in the U.S. history concerns a pair of photos taken by Paul Trent after his wife Evelyn first spotted a slow-moving metallic disc in the sky near their farm just out of McMinnville, Oregon. Trent only managed to snap 2 pictures before the disc was out of range, and skeptics and believers have fought over the photos since. In the 80s, 2 journalists, Philip J. Klass and Robert Schaefer, made it their mission to debunk the sighting. They concluded that the Trents lied about the time of day the photos were taken, so they of course had to be lying about the content of the photos. UFOlogists have since contested that theory, but the photos were printed in Time magazine, making it one of the best publicized UFO events in history. To this day, there's still no consensus. I'm wondering oh, yeah, I see it here. Okay. That looks legitimate to me. I wish I could share these pictures with you.
Yeah, I've seen them, and I know I'm looking at them right now. So I brought them up so I could remember exactly which one it was. Yeah, I remember seeing these before, and I looked at these a long time ago, and like you said, they were in Time magazine, so they did get quite a bit of coverage. The
Well, it's like somebody could do this on the power lines. You see the power lines going across, but it's obviously going the other direction.
Yeah, that's this one was a tough one because of the situation itself. The ones I'm looking at aren't very good photographs. But the one with the little thing sticking out of the top of it has always been that one is I have a much higher resolution photo of it. That one's always been a strange one looking at it, and it looks almost it's odd looking, and it's just so hard to figure out what it might or might not be, and what I would go more on what the person's what they're. Let me put it this way: I would go more on what the people say than what the photographs look like. Put it that way. Because
yeah, I'm not seeing them when you're talking about with the thing coming off the top. I see like a shed and an old horse trailer, and you see it at a certain angle, and then it's moving away from the shed or barn or whatever it may be into the fog. Perhaps that's why they were saying it was the wrong time of day, because it obviously looks hazy and foggy. You can tell by the mountains in the background. But it's 2 of the same picture. I haven't seen the one with a little dilly coming off the top, but it's definitely... It looks legitimate to me.
I pasted it to you.
Alrighty.
Skype. Yeah, that like those, you have to go back to for me, that you have to go back to what the interview was with the people and how everything panned out at the time. There was so much back in those days that you could do with photography, and I don't want to badmouth the people and everything like that. For them to be clear looking, it's just one of those things. You have to look at those photographs and make up your mind for yourself. I can't really I don't really have a good a good opinion on that one way or the other. Um, I never did get into those that much. So yeah, Ron in the Skype room's talking about the Battle of LA,
Yeah, that was a very interesting
1946.
case.
Yeah, now that one I'm more into being a legit case, and
Mm-hmm.
um the
Well,
the
there's like,
situation where they shot so much at that one and everything, it was incredible. And for what they were trying to give it at, of the situation about how supposedly it was something that a weather balloon that floated up against the weather, against the air currents and everything else, and then floated back against the air currents again. That was just, total BS to me. But and so many people were involved in that sighting and everything. Um, but yeah, this one here with those two that you were talking about, I can't even pronounce the name of that town without looking at it. Um, McMinnville or whatever.
mm-hmm.
Um, that is an interesting sighting, and like I said, I would mainly base that on the speaking with the people. Um,
Well, to me,
because
the
those,
the weirder one is the acorn-shaped one. Like, how many acorn-shaped aircraft have you heard about?
the only one I ever heard about was the one that was over near me, and that
Yeah,
was the one in Pennsylvania.
Kecksburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was in,
yeah, that's the one that
go ahead.
that's the one that came over, and actually it arced over and came right over my area here in Warren, Ohio. And what originated, I believe, over through when it entered the Earth's atmosphere over Canada, and it came down through. Then it made a sharp turn, and then slowed down. And anyways, it made some maneuvers. Then it took it, and it came down there in Kecksburg. And because of the maneuvers it made and the way it slowed down, um, that's what it discerned itself from a meteorite from a meteorite. Um, and I know it came right over my area, and then it came down to Kecksburg, which isn't that far away from me. Um,
Yeah, it says it
now that one
happened
was
in 1965. A giant space acorn landed in the woods outside of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. That's at least what the town members and volunteer firefighters who found the craft said. The alien craft was supposedly the size of a car and covered in writing that resembled Egyptian hieroglyphs. Locals claim that the U.S. military rolled in, secured the perimeter, kicked civilians out, and took something away on a flatbed truck. The military publicly denies having found anything in the woods that day. Similarly, a local newspaper, the Greensburg Tribune Review, ran a story the morning after the event confirming the sighting and landing of a UFO, as well as the military's intervention. A later edition of the paper claimed the exact opposite, that nothing had been found, which is pretty normal when it comes to the government and the men in black, etc. They always got to try to cover it up. Why?
I often wonder about the Russians and stuff on that one. Um, but then again, even it's still with when they talk about it being possibility of it being the Russian um, capsule and stuff like that, I don't think it could possibly be that because of the turn it made and how it slowed down. So then the other thing that they talk about it, the possibility of it being the Bell, the German Bell. I can't remember the name of the Bell. What was the Glock? The one they thought it might have been from Do you know what I'm talking about, Tessa?
I remember hearing about one where they went into it and then it shot off somewhere and then came back. But when they shot off somewhere, they saw people and I think a forest and different things going on. But it seemed like it was just a blink in time when in reality it was a longer amount of time. Makes me wonder if that was the same craft, because I think it was the same time, and these guys were messing around with this certain UFO intelligence that they had as far as building one of their own. And I was muted the whole time. But no, I was saying there was a couple guys that built one themselves, and it was a bell shape, and they flashed somewhere. There was an electric blue light that flashed, and then they could see people outside of the craft kind of messing around with it, and then they had flashed back. More time had passed than they realized, but that was a pretty interesting thing. But it was the same shape. It was like a bell shape. Sorry, I had to repeat myself. I muted myself, Mooney.
Yeah, they called it the Glock, which just meant the bell. There was an octagon, I think it was shaped site that they found. Trying to remember where it was, but the site had a large power station near it, and what it actually even had, and had, you could see the power lines coming down the hill, and they were down, and it fed into that area, and that octagon-shaped thing, the concrete structure, had places where they could actually chain that the bell to it, and they thought perhaps that's where they were doing the testing for it at. Supposedly that thing was destroyed or it disappeared during the later parts of the war. It was supposedly one of the ones that had the mercury in the rings, and then they had it powered, and mercury was going one direction and another direction, in it, so it would create that effect, like you were talking about, the bright blue flash, and it was either going to be a time machine or some sort of a type of a porthole.
Right.
So they think that might have been that or one of those, and they think that some of the Germans might have been using it to, even possibly maybe Hitler, to disappear in that thing. But
yeah, I don't think it worked out too well for him. I think they ended up taking subs. I'll take a sub.
Pick a sub, any sub.
Any sub.
They pretty much nailed it about him going down there to Argentina or whatever. But
yeah, there's too many coincidences as far as that goes. The whole Nazi regime and people actually taking it up down in that area. It only makes sense that there were Nazis there that were teaching people their ways, trying to recruit and such, and yeah, it's pretty strange. I don't think they had very much success with that. Oh man.
And
mute button.
People talk about we're doing the whole thing about not declassification, but what's the word for the exposure of about alien technology and all that stuff they always use. Anyways, about the government letting us know about UFOs and all. Disclosure.
Yes.
I think we've been having disclosure for 60 years. And you add it all up, and then you got your picture there, okay? From Roswell and from all these other things that we've had happen since that day, you just add up all these little incidents, and you have your disclosure right there. Roswell, they told you straight out the first time that they had a ship that crashed and they had some occupants in it, okay? Then they came back after that and said it wasn't, okay?
Yeah.
Then you go and you have things like the Battle of L.A. and you have
the V-shaped lights in Hudson Valley, New York.
Yeah. And then the ones over top the White House, where you had, for a week solid or whatever it was, they had 5 UFOs go over top the White House every night.
Mm-hmm. And did you say the Phoenix Lights as well? That was a really big one.
Yeah, what more can you have for that? I mean, how slow moving of a UFO can you ask for?
Right?
That thing went through how many states?
Yeah, especially in that airspace in Phoenix. Like, when I'm sitting at my mom's house, I'm seeing airplanes flying over from different directions all the time. And that's right there at the South Mountain where this was seen. So it's like, if that was an Air Force thing, there were still... I don't know. It was really weird how it happened and how it was denied. But didn't Kurt Russell see that as well? Didn't he call that in?
I don't know. I just know that, when I was watching all the stuff and saw and you saw everything that happened on the news and everything, and like Larry King and everything when I was watching it, and then you saw them do the second part. And then all of a sudden, things changed instantly on the news coverage. And the only thing they started doing on the news coverage, they went from showing the actual clips of the UFO, then they started only showing the flares. And you didn't see the lights from the UFO anymore. You only saw the flares.
Yeah, and they're trying to say the whole time it was flares, which really it wasn't.
Right. And that flipped like a switch. Everything flipped over at a certain point. All the coverage went all of a sudden, boom. It all changed. And it was just like super, like, I'm sitting there watching it and like WTF, like, what's going on here? You had it there, you had it right, and now you're going to the other part. Why? You saw the cover up right in front of your eyes.
Right.
You go from the actual thing, and then you go straight to the flares now, and you're only showing the flares. Only thing you're talking about now are the flares. You were showing the UFO, and you talked about, these are the flares. And now you're going to the flares and saying the flares was the only thing there was. There were only flares. Like,
not
so
true.
What do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, there's people
like
and there's sheeple, and they're like, well, the sheeple will listen and they'll overpower the people, and it's an everyday occurrence.
I didn't have a DVR back then. They didn't have it, and but they acted like it didn't occur. It's like they erased it from history. They erased that half hour or whatever it was from history. It was gone. It wasn't there. We're not talking about that anymore. We're past that.
We're way past that now. Yeah.
It's like Mooney, we're not on that anymore. Shut up. Okay? Go on. We're past that. Okay? And it's like, I saw it. We saw it. We were just talking about... No, we're past that.
Right. Well, the other one that I had was from March 24th, 1983, and it's the V-shaped lights in Hudson Valley, New York. And a fever of sorts overtook the Hudson Valley area in the mid-'80s, with over 5,000 people reporting UFO sightings between 1982 and 1986. But the most significant event from that period came in the form of a mass sighting on March 24th, 1983. Throughout the evening of March 24th, Hudson Valley residents reported seeing a V-shaped object covered in lights. It took interest in a nuclear reactor bodies of water. Witness reports from that time are all documented in the book Night Siege, the Hudson Valley UFO sightings, which quotes a witness as saying that on the night he saw an enormous flying object covered in multicolored lights. If there is such a thing as a flying city, this was a flying city, he said. The prolonged event is often considered to be a grouping of Air Force jets, though there's no real proof of that. We actually had a sighting like that when I was a kid in the 80s, and we were going along a highway somewhere in Arkansas with my dad, and he was the UFO believer in my family, and of course all these cars are pulling over, people are getting out and taking pictures and checking it out, and it gets closer, and all of a sudden we realize it's a bunch of helicopters in a V formation. But this one seems to be different as far as it's saying different colored lights and such. You're pretty
I'm looking
close
at
to
some of
that
the
area.
pictures and stuff from that, and that's one of the things. There's the recreations are showing all these multiple colors of lights and stuff.
Yeah.
And the witnesses are all talking about that. Now you see those ones that they're showing there are reminiscent of the ones that were shown that were captured. The police here, like 5 miles from here, tracked down this huge UFO, and they looked like this, where they could see the back part. It was like windows, and they could actually see occupants inside.
Mm-hmm.
And these were police officers that were tracking it from neighborhood to neighborhood, from county to county. Okay? And they were dispatched through the 911 callers, and the police officers were following it through these neighborhoods as it slowly went through and made turns, and they could watch it, and they were following it all the way through.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It was right here in Hubbard,
Mm-hmm.
and right near here. And this is well documented, and they've done TV shows about it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's very reminiscent of one of the pictures I'm looking at here, but they could actually see the backside of it had like a double 2-story windows, and they could actually see people walking around on the inside of it. Not people, but figures walking around on the inside. And how much? We got a few minutes here.
Oh, we have a few minutes.
Okay.
But yeah, that was
I was,
interesting, and I saw that one, and they actually had interference with their cameras and their radios during that time. So that's pretty interesting as well.
Well, that is pretty interesting. Distortions like that, and that's why it's, you really should have really should be carrying around a camera that's a film camera, still has Kodak film in it, 35 millimeter,
Mm-hmm.
and one that does not need to have the batteries in order to take a picture. Something that's totally manual.
Yeah.
Like I still have my Nikon FM, even if it has no batteries in it. You can still.
Because I have an older camera, but it still has batteries. So if you could have one that doesn't have batteries, that's prime, because it does interfere with the power source.
Yeah, well, mine has batteries in it, but even without the battery, you can still take a picture. And
Okay.
there's not very many cameras that can do that, 35 millimeters and stuff. But this is one of those ones that you can, and that's one of the. It was an odd thing whenever I bought it, because I wanted a totally manual camera, and that was one of the odd things they told me. I said, "Look, even if you're out somewhere and the battery totally goes dead, you're out in the winter or something, you can still take photographs. Because even if you know, you just have to go ahead and, you have to know what the settings, what to set it for, but you can still use it even if the meter goes dead. And but a film camera is not going to be interfered with like electronics and everything. So, you know,
maybe get a bunch of like disposable cameras. Those don't have batteries at all.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Those are open setting. They're just they're not going to be. You're not going to zoom in on anything or like that, but they're just point and click, and you just go at it. And
well, Mooney, I hate to say it, but it's the end of our time together.
Aw, it's so nice we had this time together.
Yes, I can't wait to do it again with my Mooney. But I'm so glad that you called in and hung out with me. I was getting pretty lonely over here on this side of the world.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it, dear. So nice to talk with you again, and to have fun chatting about stuff.
Me too.
And blessings and donuts, y'all.
I love that. Blessings and donuts. I shall take a cream filled. But thanks so much again for joining us. I hope you come into the after party with us. But thank you, Mooney, for calling in and keeping me company.
Thank you, Tessa. Have a great night.
You too.
See you in a...
And nighty night, love and light to all of my parasylamists out there. I'm so glad you guys joined us and listened in. I'm sorry that our guest called out on us and he had some family issues to deal with, but he will be back. Chris Chappelle from Dark Hunters Paranormal will be back on the 28th of this month. Be sure you tune in. Every night we have a show for you guys, kicking off at 7 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Central, and 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on a plethora of outlets. And if you'd like to join us for the Para Asylum After Party, be sure to call in at 1-970-335-9596 or look me up on Skype at Tessa Thomas-Peterson.